Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story. It is Tuesday and we're in the book of Zechariah chapter 8 today, and about middle way, 2/3 of the way into the passage. There's a couple of verses that say this. It says, "But this is what you must do. Tell the truth to each other, render verdicts in your courts that are just and that lead to peace. Don't scheme against each other. Stop your love of telling lies that you swear are the truth. I hate all these things, says the Lord." So there is, it appears, okay, that the courts are being used to, yesterday we talked about oppression. And there would be people, okay, and here we go, we'll just jump right in the deep end. There would be people who would tell you that our court system is oppressive or rigged. And the reason why the Lady Justice has a blindfold on is because justice is supposed to be blind, okay? And sometimes it's not necessarily about the truth, okay? For example, if I get in trouble, I can't afford to hire the best one, but I can afford to hire solid counsel to defend me, who's going to have all grades of expertise and information at their disposal. And I've seen this recently in a divorce case where one spouse had access to resources and the other one didn't in a separation, and one got superior representation, the other one could not afford representation, and so they got completely taken advantage of, and so sometimes it's not even those are where some of the imbalances come in. And you can say, well, we give public defenders. That's a whole different conversation. Rarely.
I've watched Night Court. I know what public defenders are.
Rarely are public defenders the best lawyer in town. And usually they're overworked and have way more case. They're just trying to get you through without a lot of hiccups. And that's no knock against the public defender. It's just like they're not able to do it. But in this verses here, he is talking about truth and justice going together. How are the two correlated? And are there times truth contradicts justice or justice contradicts truth? And in order to bring justice, you have to ignore the truth, or in order to speak the truth, you've got to alter justice. How do they go together? How do truth and justice go together?
I think you can have truth that is out there that people know and no justice, but I don't think you can have justice without the truth. I think that if there are lies involved that have created a situation, almost immediately there is injustice, that there's something that isn't right. And I say that as an Enneagram 1 who likes things to be right. And so I would say, maybe you guys have a different view, but I would say that if there is lies and half-truths that are involved in the justice, then it's not true justice.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we see people that had to do something that was either illegal or something like that to survive, and you can understand why the punishment for the crime might have been lessened because of discernment. But then there's other times where somebody commits a crime, they own up to it, but they still have to serve their sentence to what it was. And kind of goes back to the old question people would ask you is, would you steal bread for your family? Something like that. If your family was starving, would you steal bread?
Trick question, the bread is poisoned.
Would you steal bread if your family was hungry?
I want to say no, but I mean, you're in a dilemma right there. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
You know, the Bible distinguishes between people who are in need that steal
Mm-hmm.
and people who are not in need that steal.
Wasn't it like David and his companions that either were they given the bread that were supposed to be for the priests,
Well,
or
he
were they taken?
lied. If I remember the story correctly, he lied and said that Samuel or Saul or somebody had sent him.
Okay.
Do you recall the story?
Not in great detail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
But I know
I
they
think
were
he
in need.
lied that the king had sent him, if I remember right, and he eats, the holy bread,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can survive. Alyssa, you said you could have truth without justice, but you can't have justice without truth. Give me a time where you could have. Can you give an example? Because I think I would agree. My brain's motoring over here trying to come up with an example where you could have truth without justice.
I got one.
Go for it.
I watch a lot of criminal shows. Criminal Minds is one of my favorites. When somebody's done something so heinous that has affected a family, but when it comes time to serve justice to them, they've taken their life or they've already died years ago. So it really feels like justice hasn't been served, but the truth has come out of who the person was that committed the crime.
I would agree. I think that I was in Cleveland when I believe his name was Anthony Sowell. What? No, that's the wrong mass murderer that was there at that time. But there was someone who had kept these girls. They were girls when he kidnapped them.
Oh yeah,
in their
yeah,
house.
and the one got out.
And the one got out. I was living in Cleveland, driving by like the road that it was off of, like it was crazy. And then I believe he ended up killing himself in prison, and it just kind of felt like that justice. I don't even know if his full sentence had come down yet or whatever, but it was just like it just kind of felt like they weren't going to get justice, that he was going to escape, and these girls were going to have to live. These women now were going to have to live with that for the rest of their lives.
What do you think? In would it have mattered? I mean, to the women that have to live with that. Do you think that would have mattered? I'm curious. I don't know.
Now this is memory, and so I'm trying to remember that I think I read an article where the girls were quoted, the women. I need to call them women because they are now older. Where they kind of were upset by it, that there wasn't the kind of the finalization of that justice.
Yeah, because I've tried to think through. I hear people use the word closure and things from time to time, and I don't know. Maybe it's just my nature. Like I've tried to think through some places that I wish I had closure and didn't. I can't. Nothing comes to mind. And I hear people use that often. And I'm sure psychologically that there are some people who need that loop tied off, even from an personality difference. Like I'm just thinking about the difference between you and I. Like I can be done way before you can be done.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but I'm also started way before you start, because I'm usually on the front side thinking about it, so, but the tying a loop for me isn't always necessary. And so I think sometimes personality plays into it. I was thinking more about times I see justice because let me read again just to make sure. It says, render verdicts in your courts that are just and that lead to peace. Okay. I can think about times where the truth dictated this response. So for example, the courts they have sentencing guidelines, that judges have certain parameters that they have to live within. And, in a plea bargain, for example, the pleas have to be to certain offenses so that the judge can sentence within a certain parameter. You follow what I'm saying? And every state is different. Every locale and how that plays out is different. And it's so, for example, in North Carolina, you could commit a particular crime, and the guidelines, what they consider to be just, may look different than it does in South Carolina or Alabama or New York. Um, and I would say it probably gets more lenient to more difficult the further south you go, depending on the issue. There are I think there are times when justice, we are too hard because we have the truth and we're like, this is, man. And a lot of it has to do with our own pet peeves and past experiences and, all of those things that, man, this is what we want. And other times we're more lenient or disconnected from the implications of it. So, for example, I know people whose response to people who have committed child sex crimes would be different from mine based on their personal experience. Because your personal experience is going to dictate what you believe is right and just. And so the truth could be the same for two people, but their response to it, what they consider to be justice, is different. For the same people. I've even seen people recently in a staff meeting. We were having we're going through a thing on church integrity in the church, and we were talking about restoration in ministry from moral failure. And there was a particular suggestion in one of the things we had listened to, and there were varying beliefs as to what justice should look like around that table, and I think that is very difficult for us to grasp. But I think the addition of it's got to bring peace is a key piece to this, because if what we carry out as justice destroys everything, it's not very just. It's certainly not peaceful. It may be truthful. All right. We may be 100% right that they did this, and we were within our parameters to be able to do it, but it also may not be the best thing for the whole. And so justice and peace kind of go together.
Yeah,
as much as truth.
Well, healing and peace are determined by the people that are affected, and justice and closure can come, but depending on the pain and the people, they may never get that. I mean, they may never heal. I've seen real court cases where somebody was convicted of a crime that had been cold for so long, and the people finally got closure on their daughter or son being killed, but now they see this other family that's destroyed because their criminal child is going off to be put to death, and now you have two families that have just been cut to the core. So, I mean, and how do you get healing and peace out of that? I mean, they got closure and there was justice, but
it's interesting. How much influence, and this just came to my mind, and I had to go look to make sure I was right about the wording. How much influence the Bible has on law, particularly in America, but in the world. In the Supreme Court, the Ten Commandments are hung on the wall behind them because it is the basis of all law. But we call judges of record the justice of the peace. That is, that we use that term, that justice and peace go together just as much as truth and justice go together. Like, we should be making rulings that create peace, and sometimes that means putting hardened criminals away. Sometimes that may mean giving leniency to in certain places that, we need to give leniency to instead of trying to prove a point.
I think that as he's talking about peace, I love the end of the chapter where it talks about people from different nations coming together and saying, like, show us your God. I just love that, as you start to have the truth that leads to justice and brings peace, others are going to be like, oh, we want that, and I think that is a really powerful picture.
And I think when people want truth, justice, and peace, you hear it in their verbiage. You can feel it from their heart, and that's what draws people. Because I think all of y'all know, you probably could evaluate. I know people who fall to the truth side, and like that's the only thing they care about. And other people who fall to the peace side, and that's the only thing they care about. And all of it goes together to give the picture. The heart of God would be a way I would say it. Well, thank you for joining us today on this edition of One Single Story. We hope you'll be back tomorrow, and maybe we can find something else controversial to talk about.